Yeah, this is a tough act to follow. C++ was my first programming language over 30 years ago. And then I didn't use it for a long time, but I did work at Google, which already was mentioned on stage, is heavily C++ based. One of my roles was I was the tech lead for search rendering, and the search front-end server is written, it's technically nowadays a Java application, but it has mostly C++ in it. And search application server is also C++, and the search backend is also C++. So interesting technology choice. Like, I think we have all these new grads at Google doing like C++ coding, and they really shouldn't, and so it constantly crashes. But it's very fast, and if you measure your throughput in gigawatt hours, then you really need a programming language that is efficient. But yeah, I won't be talking about this today, and also Vercel is definitely a Go shop, so no C++ right now. I have a video to play. It's mostly a joke, but to get us in the mood. It's from a conference that we did in San Francisco 2 weeks ago.
Welcome to Ship AI with AI. AI SDK. AI SDK built with AI. AI SDK. AI with AI. AI Cloud. Ship AI. Sell AI Cloud. AI SDK. AI app. AI built with AI. Built with AI. AI overview. AI overview. AI SDK. AI Cloud. AI Cloud.
AI SDK. AI SDK is AI logic. AI SDK. The AI SDK. AI SDK 5. The AI SDK. AI gateway. AI gateway. AI SDK. The AI cloud.
The AI Cloud, Ship AI. AI SDK, AI Cloud. AI Cloud, AI and AI Cloud. AI Cloud, AI Cloud. AI Gateway, AI Cloud, AI. AI Gateway, AI Gateway, AI Gateway, AI Gateway, AI Cloud, AI Era. AI Cloud.
AI Agent, an AI Agent. AI Agent, AI Cloud, AI SDK, AI Agent.
Anyway, I was making a bet with myself, like how long I can take it. Anyway, I gave a talk at a conference in Paris last year, and my talk was like at 4 p.m., so like kind of the last talk of the day, and I was the first person mentioning AI on the entire day, and it was a complete culture shock for me, because this is how every conversation right now in San Francisco goes. So definitely pilled in that sense. Cool. But yeah, let's get started. This scary slide is where the video was supposed to be, but because we don't have internet, it doesn't work. And like, I don't know. So for some reason, Google Slides, I looked it up today. It's 18-year-old software, and it doesn't play back video. It just has a YouTube embed. So that's, by the way, a very good lesson for what is important to be scope in your software, right? Not everything you think you need to have. Anyway, I'm not doing a talk about Vercel, but some people maybe know what it is, some people don't. We've been having success in Germany. Bayer, HelloFresh. I don't think I can name the premium car brand, but you all would love to have one of their cars. And really what we do is we make frameworks. We make the most popular web frameworks, the most popular AI application frameworks, and then we give you a platform where you can throw over the fence, and we run it for you, or you don't do that, and you still use the frameworks because they are very generic. Cool. So Tobias actually had all the foresight. I was going to do a quick poll, like who in the room has actually shipped an agent? You're doing okay, 30%. Not bad, not bad. I definitely think it's going to be most of you next year. And but one thing that if you're in tech for a little bit, like I think every 15 years roughly, you have like a mega wave. Every 5 years, there's a new technology coming out that is so new that people feel the need that you kind of have to define it. And in a way, if a talk contains a definition of something, it ultimately means that it's immature, right? Because you don't have like a common sense of what things are. And so let's do a quick definition. This one is currently the most popular one from Anthropic. Agents are LLMs autonomously using tools in a loop. And that's in a way a horrible definition because it doesn't actually tell you at all what it is, right? It tells you what the implementation strategy is. So there's a large language model, you're giving it tools, and then you essentially tell it, you can keep using the tools and keep making tool calls. But it very much doesn't tell you why. Then we have this definition from Google, which is more useful. AI agents are AI systems designed to perceive their environment and make decisions and take autonomous actions to achieve user-defined goals. So, okay, that actually tells us a little bit of like why you would want to do this, what it's good for. So it's computer programs that aim to do certain things and then go there in an autonomous fashion. And so, like, I'm adding my own definition, which also is a very bad definition because it's not a definition. But I think about agents as a new kind of software. So really, that's the emphasis here. That we always wanted to write, but couldn't, essentially for economic reason, or like because it was just too difficult, too much work. And if you're like, I don't know, this is like the worst Venn diagram in the history of Venn diagrams. But basically, I have a large. It's really supposed to be large. Our designers didn't get the memo. The large, like blue ring is supposed to be referencing all the software that you could possibly want to have, right? And then in purple is the software that we were able to write, right? Where we say, okay, there's a business reason to write it. This is how long it's going to take us, and so we can justify putting this investment in. And it doesn't fill out the entire circle. There was always software that we would love to have, but we couldn't implement because it was too difficult or too much work or too brittle, too difficult to roll out, right? And so really what agents just are is this new type of software that fills out more of that circle. And that's why it's like, in a way, a once-in-a-lifetime like opportunity for all of us because this doesn't actually happen all the time, right? Like if you look at what people do with software, and obviously that's a lot. Like they run your car, they run your coffee machine, they run your, web pages. Like it's a broad set of things, but ultimately it hasn't changed in the last 40 years, right? Since the invention of the GUI, maybe that's the last time we really made something new possible that ultimately maybe before it wasn't possible. So it's a big deal in that sense, in the sense that doesn't happen very often. Yeah, but also that's a very bloomy way to talk about it. It's, as we saw from the definition, actually not that complicated, right? It's really just automation of workflows that we couldn't automate before because they needed a little bit of decision making that was very, very difficult to model in software. And so what's a workflow? This is like the simplest version. You could obviously have branches and loops and all kinds of different things, but workflow typically have some kind of trigger, and then you have a step, and then you complete it, and you do another step, and you complete it, another step, you complete it, and then some kind of output, right? And what's an agentic workflow? Well, you replace one of the steps, or you have an agent steps, right? The agent has a bunch of tools, and for definitional purposes, actually the tool might be a sub-workflow, right? Or the tool might be a sub-agent. Like people, by the way, they will use this bloomy language, and I don't know. People love adding complexity to things. So if you ever hear someone say multi-agentic, all they mean is that the tool happens to be an agent, and an agent is just a function that is an LLM with a tool in the loop. So it's all not very complicated. Cool. So my company makes the SDK for building agents. Use Workflow is a brand new library that we actually shipped at this event 2 weeks ago for modeling workflows in software. Workflows are like the bread and butter of backend systems, and have been for many years. But they have now come back to the surface of something that people are really excited about because suddenly there's more workflows to model. We thought we already had modeled all the workflows that we ever needed to do, but now there's new ones. Cool. All right, this much for the framing, right? So this entire talk is actually about the last row, which is how do we find out what agents to build? And I have this super hot take that you hear all these projects failing because people are actually being too ambitious. And I think the reason why we're being too ambitious is that we are using coding agents, and so we think this AI is super smart because it's incredibly good at this, right? And so you can have an entire talk why that's the case, why it's easy, relatively speaking, to make coding agents, and why it might be more difficult to build other agents. But the gist is that current AI is actually somewhat dumb, and that means we need to build agents that fit what they can actually do, right? But the good news is that there's still lots of things we can do, very impactful projects waiting for us. And so I have this foolproof method that doesn't find you every agent that you should build, but essentially every agent that it finds is one that you can actually build and that is also high impact, right? And because we are doing new kind of software, we're not in a situation where we're getting the last 10% of something, right? We're doing the first 10% of something, and so we get to be choosy and we get to be picky and we get to pick the low-hanging fruit and be very successful because there's easy stuff still, right? It's going to be different in 5 years. We're going to have done all the easy stuff, and now we're going to do complicated stuff. But also in 5 years, the AI will be incredibly smarter, and so it will actually be easier to do the difficult things. Cool. So I promised the foolproof method. It's you going around your company and you ask your employees, what do you hate most about your job? Or like the slight version of it, like, what busy work would you love to never do again? And this it hits the sweet spot, right? Because why do people hate these things? It's because they're boring, because they don't have to turn on their brain to do it. And so what does it find? It finds two things. It finds things that are boring, so they have to be done a lot, so there's high business impact if I can make them faster. And it finds things that are low cognitive load, and so even if your AI isn't super smart, it knows how to do it, right? And I mean, you can even imagine this, right? Like you go to I'm saying like go to like the finance department or go to the HR department, right? And just ask them, what are you wasting time with? Like what would you rather not do? And you really find problems that people that like are this perfect fit for what like a 2025 frontier model is like gonna excel at, right? More than excel because it doesn't get bored, right? So it's really perfect for them. And so yeah, the next session of my talk is that basically just walking through us having actually done this, right? Vercel is a company that's thriving in dog fooding, right? I will never sell you anything that we haven't like very, very, very heavily used ourselves. And so while we also make agents that you can buy from us, this is stuff that we built for ourselves because our own, company was being inefficient. And so the first folks we talked to was our go-to-market department, and in particular the frontline sales folks who like call people and so forth. And they were telling us about this process where when someone fills out like the contact sales form on the website, what they would actually do, right? And so apparently it takes them 50 minutes at least for every single submission. And what they do is they go look up the LinkedIn of the person, right? And they Google the company to figure out like, is this like 5 people and they really should be on our self-service plan, or is it 500,000 people and someone very senior from our company should call them back, right? And then, because it's 2025, they copy paste into a spreadsheet and like do everything kind of manual, right? And so obviously this takes a lot of time. And so what we built to fix that problem is a lead processing agent that again starts with a contact sales form. By the way, if anyone has filled this out before, thank you very much. You just hit submit. That's when the workflow is triggered. We always then have like this main agent core reasoning loop, right? And so very concretely, what it does is it filters spam messages. It looks for low quality submissions. And what actually is one important thing that you learn when you have a form on the internet is people put in support requests, right? And so obviously it's not being helped if the salesperson is calling them and like trying to answer the deployment problem. But like you can then route that automatically to the support team and actually get folks help, right? And then it actually just does what the human would have done, right? The agent has a tool to go to LinkedIn. And the agent has a tool to Google, go to websites, and figure things out, right? And just to get ourselves grounded again, like obviously 2 years ago you could have written this program, but like the actual, like the openness of the problem is actually quite large. And like sometimes you need to go to LinkedIn. I don't know. Maybe in Germany you go to Sing. Is that still a thing? I don't know. Or when you Google something, what might come back, right? Like they maybe have a Wikipedia page, maybe they don't. Like all of these things are actually incredibly complicated. But what's actually going on is that you just turn that into a sub-agent, and you let the sub-agent kind of figure things out, and come back with like, here's the summary of everything you need to know about the company. And again, this is not complicated. It's just an LLM with some specialized tools. Cool. So we made it this far in here. And now the agent determined that the lead is qualified. And then finally, it writes an email to approach the user, right? But then we give that email to like an actual salesperson to personalize, make sure it's actually good, right? And send it out. Because obviously that human touch is still important. But notably, they now, like the human started the role with like, here's the research report. You can figure it out. The human didn't start the role with, you have to be doing research here. And then, because it's all automated, we can now also write it to our Salesforce, put it into internal dashboards, etc. Like the result of this was actually quite stark. So there was actually a press report. They loved writing crazy headlines. Because someone said, which is true, that we used to actually have 10 people doing this research. It's not actually 10 people work, but people are inefficient, right? And so like these are the most junior employees of the company. And now we have one person supervising the agent. But the reality is that we actually are growing the team, right? So we didn't let go 9 people, but they can now actually communicate with customers rather than doing research. Right? So it quickly saved hundreds of days of work. And yeah, and because I want to be really practical, so we did open source the entire thing. Again, I'm not selling you this agent, but I think it's really helpful because it's still a new technology that you can see a real application fully written out, right? It's not meant to be fitting into any company. Like maybe if you also use Salesforce, and maybe if you happen to also, I don't know, sell internet software, maybe you can use it relatively unchanged, but it's not the point, right? The point is that this is, I think, a really good example for how to build an application like this. Cool. Got 2 more examples. We'll see some patterns. The next one is motivated by this stat. So there's actually apparently over 400 million deployments per year on Vercel. That's kind of a crazy number. And obviously, like, there's a few bad apples, right? Like, people do bad things on the internet, turns out. So that might be phishing. People love putting out, like, I don't know, Facebook login pages to scam your mother. They love to put on scams, impersonations, etc., right? And so we built an abuse agent that tries to determine whether something's abuse, right? And so this is used by our trust and safety team to make the reports more automatic, faster, more consistent decisions. And it actually looks very similar, again, because we want to see some patterns, right? So there's an abuse form, kind of like the contact sales form, except for the opposite. And we also have like API reporters where like some companies that are specialized in abuse would report thousands of cases per day. And but whatever happens, API form always triggers the same agent, which again goes into the main agent reasoning loop. This has a few more tools, right? So it can gather context. For example, it can look at the projects that were actually being reported. It looks at the deployed assets, right? Like, is there a Facebook logo? Probably very sus. It can render the page using a web browser, again, seeing what's going on. It can look at the team data, like, did they register their account last week or 2 years ago? Have they been paying the bills? Are they paying for a domain, or are they using something that we give them for free? Obviously, the latter just a little bit more sus. So it kind of goes through there. And then, yeah, it looks at signals for abuse, like known visual indicator for like things that aren't really shouldn't be around on the internet. And then finally, it summarizes the results, generates a confidence score, says, okay, we should block this, we should have a manual review, agent can figure it out, or no, it's actually very clearly a false positive. And again, like I don't have any code on slides, but like all of this stuff is like, you should always be able to, in your head, kind of think about what would be the ChatGPT prompt to do this task, and now you basically just give the agent to do the same thing, right? And so where in the past, maybe to get a confidence score, you would have done like a lot of research, and you would have done a lot of maybe ML, if that's what you were going to do this kind of analysis. Now you just basically say, here agent are my classification criteria for certain things, and because you have a brain, you can assign one of these scores. All right, things go back into Salesforce, so where the team is working on the ticket queue. Obviously, we are a hosting provider. Like, our goal is not to block websites, right? So we will always review these manually. But now the person that does the review, again, like has the entire context that they might need in front of them. And so just the initial data showed 59% reduction in time per case. But what I actually hear now is that we are actually doing substantially better. So we've been since iterating on it, right? And I think you can imagine why that's true, right? Again, like in the past, they get the report, they have to do the research themselves, they have to go to all these things. Now they get presented with like essentially a decision case document that has done all the work that usually we would have done on the manual layer. Cool. All right, one more agent. This one, I think also we try to pick examples that are extremely widely applicable, right? So this is an agent that's different from the other ones. This is an agent that helps you find data, right? Very common, I think, situation in every company that you're an executive, you want to have some report, right? And what do you do in that situation? Ideally, maybe you're a data scientist yourself, or like you're technical enough to say, okay, I have SQL access to my Snowflake, and I can figure it out myself. But realistically, what really happens in companies is that you have some kind of centralized data team. They are probably overworked, right? So you give them a task. Maybe you're important enough that they say, I got to get it done in a couple of days, or you go in the backlog and stuff never comes back, right? So it would be nice if there was an agent for it. And I think what is interesting is that there are obviously these like text to SQL tools on the market, right? That's another thing that has been easier to build since we have LLMs that can generate SQL from text input. But I think if you've ever tried, what you've experienced is that they don't work so well because ultimately they have not enough context about your company to do a good job. They don't understand the semantics of the business, right? And so what we were wondering is, if you build a custom agent, so one that's just for ourselves, can you manually do the work of documenting the semantics of the business to an extent that it actually works? So that you can actually go to Slack and ask, how many deployments did Vercel make in the last year? And what did you see? 400 million. There you go, right? So I actually used this tool for this. And so yeah, we built this Slack agent for business intelligence. This one starts with Slack. So you say, hey, and we call it D0. Again, how many deployments did I make in the last year? Once again, you always go into this main reasoning loop. You built the query with the right tables and columns, and like this seems like, you can actually, again, you can prompt an LLM, hey, here's my schema, make me a query, right? And it'll do a fine job. But if instead you go, okay, here's a semantic catalog of the entire schema and examples for how to do certain things, right? If you put in the work, this is like much easier than it would have been 4 years ago, but the work isn't zero. So if you put in the work, you can actually get the thing to work really well. You run the query, and then You can summarize it, visualize it, etc. Right? And finally, you just respond back on Slack in line with the answer to the question. Generally speaking, Slack bots are great. If you're using Teams or Google Chat, you can obviously adapt it. Cool. So this is the agent for business intelligence. Again, it's an open source agent, so I don't think you'll be able to use it right away. It's the whole point, right? Like you cannot use our semantic business model for your company. But we did, again, open source it so that you can think, like, have a very concrete example of, like, okay, I want to make an agent for data analysis. How would this look like? Like, what would be my starting point? Malte said there's a main agent reasoning loop. Like, what does it actually mean, right? Because obviously this is quite abstract. But then if you look at it, I think it really, really helps. So the open source version comes with a Snowflake adapter and some SQLite data, but you can adapt this to whatever you're using as a data warehouse and go through documenting your semantic business model, and then it should work really well. Very cool. All right. So last question is, what are you going to build? Maybe we can talk a little bit about some ideas on the stage, go through folks' ideas of what they hate about their job. Maybe that can be automated. I just want to bring back this question. What do you hate most about your job, right? Like as the way to find the current sweet spot of generative AI and high business impact. Again, why does it work? Because it finds the stuff that's low cognitive load, that current generation AI is actually good at, and then it gives you things that are often done, and so they're high business impact to turning them into something that's automated rather than something that you have 5 or 10 or 5,000 employees do on a regular basis. I think I can say this because we're a sponsor. So if you don't want to do this yourself, we actually have a team that comes into companies and helps them build their first agent. But you have to sign that you're going to build 3. We're going to help you with the first. We're going to help you a little bit with the second. And for the third one, you're not allowed to ask us unless something really isn't working. But I think there is this huge opportunity to kind of get started, right? Like to make the first one. It's new tech, can sometimes be daunting, but it's really worth it. And yeah, that's all I had today. Thank you very much.
So I have a few questions, and Malte, maybe you want to sit down?
I want to get some water.
You can have the couch.
I've been yapping too much.
So and folks, you can obviously also ask questions. I on the other hand have a pressing question or a few ones which I think are maybe equal to yours. I recently thought like exactly same problem here. We accidentally acquired 25 different companies with different tech stacks. And it's a bit of a mess, but it's a beautiful mess, and I enjoy working with it. But recently I had a discussion with we have like a central SRE team that also offers on-call, and they are like a bit stuck in the middle because they don't have proper documentation on all the business models, on all the tech that the companies are using, so no context or little context, and whenever there's documentation, it's outdated most likely. And we were like discussing, like in the ivory tower, we were discussing like, hey, they all hate, like the DevOps people, they hate on-call. Can't we do anything about that? Can't we, use agents for that? What would be your take on that? And how far would you actually go? I mean, the ins and outs. How far would you go with tools? Like, what would you allow an agent to do?
I promise it's not a planted question, but we have a product that does this. So, like first of all, it's not exactly what you have in mind with the what you hate most about your job question, but obviously on-call is a thing that comes to mind, right? And I think what we don't have. I guess people become customers of ourselves so that we are their on-call. But obviously, at some point, we would also have to escalate if your backend is down and so forth, right? But I think one of the good insights, and that's actually true for very general for LLMs, is so I used to work on search, right? And in search you have this idea of recall. That's given a query, what are all the documents that could possibly be interesting, and you want that to be as large as possible. But then you want also high precision, and you want from that corpus you want to actually find the right ones, right? And so if your recall is too high, then your precision will be lower. So there's a trade-off. And something very similar is going on with like alerting on systems. So you want to get every problem, but that will then lead to over-triggering of alarms, and it will lead to alert fatigue, and it will get you woken up at 2 a.m. in the morning, even though nothing's wrong, right? And so agents are actually a perfect tool for this. And so similarly, like if I give a human 15 documents from a search result, and 5 are bad search results, that sucks, right? If I give an agent 15 search results and 5 are bad, it's actually not a problem because the AI is smart. Like the AI is so much smarter. It will figure out these are bad search results, and it's not mad at you, so it will just ignore them, right? And it's very similar on this question where, like, if I, let's say, have an anomaly detection and I tune it relatively aggressively, I can ping the agent, and I give the agent essentially tools to query my observability system. I give it certain business rules about how I think about certain behaviors, but then the agent can really autonomously just make queries against the observability system and try to figure out is there anything really going on. Because it might be that the anomaly is because marketing in Asia has sent a newsletter and it's all good. It might be that there's a DDoS attack. It might be that there's DDoS attack, but it's not a bad one. Like, the systems are actually acting perfectly fine, and it seems like everything's good, and maybe you take a look on the next day, but nobody has to be woken up, right? And so these are decisions that I can delegate to an agent. I think it's a perfect use case. Sorry, that was a long answer, but like it's a. I think it's a really good question.
Perfect answer,
but it's a perfect question.
Perfect answer, but if you have the answer, like this is a real incident or not, and if you think you could actually solve it with an agent too, would you allow the agent to actually restart your Apache 2 web server or not?
Yeah, not yet, but I think probably eventually yes, right? And you can give it like certain permissions of what it's allowed to do and what it's not allowed to do. So it's definitely not out of the question. But we go as far as, for example, creating custom firewall rules, but then still someone has to approve them.
Okay. So no, I feel lucky.
Yeah, but like obviously it's going to happen, and yeah, no, it's definitely one of those things that are on the list of things that are going to be automated. It's definitely like management of production systems is in scope because it's a task that has both very repeatable work and somewhat, like, let's call it indicators for escalation, where the agent is smart enough, hopefully, then to decide, okay, I can actually not do this.
Cool. Yeah, looking forward to your DevOps agent then being released open source as well. I hope that's going to happen. No. Ah, damn it.
That's one they're not going to open source. But yeah, you can. There's a beta already running.
Okay, cool. Do we have? I think we have questions in the audience, and we have a lot of questions.
But I will say though is that it's just so fascinating how easy it was to build.
Yeah.
Right. Like because there's a perfect tool, which is like, here's a tool to query the observability system, and you can. It's worth doing it yourself, like especially if you're not on Vercel. Like it's a perfect use case, and so it's actually a good first one to kind of just get your feet wet. Yeah,
give it access to Sentry, give it access to BetterStack, whatever. Let
exactly
downtime monitors trigger the agent, right? And then it runs. It has that run loop, and it queries the systems. And obviously, you maybe at a certain point. The analogy to alert fatigue is then money flowing through your hands, right? Like if you have too many alarms, it will be costly. But
right. Yeah, but the agent cost itself is trivial compared to the value it generates.
Yeah. Still, we have many questions here, right. So maybe you have better questions than me.
I'll try to be quicker on the answers.
So, questions.
Thank you for showing workflows behind your sales form and abuse forms. So how would you protect from input which is targeting your agent, especially on abuse form? Like website itself could contain instructions for your agents, overwrite images, a lot of vulnerabilities. How you tackle it now?
Yeah, this is a really good question. Generally speaking, security is like a huge topic. It's the big problem is prompt injection. Prompt injection sounds like SQL injection, except that SQL injection is a solved problem that sometimes people, due to incompetency or whatever, right, fail to deal with. Prompt injection, most likely on transformer models, cannot be prevented. So what that means is you have to be willing to live with the worst possible thing that can happen, given the tools that you give the agent, right? And so for read-only use cases, that's relatively simple to kind of guarantee. One thing is that, like, even for read-only use cases, there is still data exfiltration. So one famous attack was against GitLab, where people were sending kind of, I think they were able to write issues or something like that, and then they were prompt injected, and then they used markdown images to extract the information. And so, like, in general, like, kind of rendering of the information is the largest vector to exfiltrate information from an agent. And so, because this is such a big issue, so I actually personally have done quite a bit of research there, and I shipped 2 markdown libraries that are hardened against this type of exfiltration. Agents love generating markdown. Traditionally, markdown is typically trusted content, so no one apparently has ever thought about making it secure. And so I published libraries that allow you to list prefixes for images. And in particular, I published a library which is very, very difficult to write, which is a markdown to markdown sanitizer. That one you only need when you're not rendering yourself, that's primarily needed for GitHub and GitLab, because there you are generating markdown, and then you're giving it to them. And if you want to impose rules over the output, that can be quite complicated, because unfortunately Markdown is not well spec'd. And so it's a very fun repository to look at, because the amount of bypasses that I've actually used AI to find is absolutely staggering.
Hi, Malte, Jens here. How do you see the future of software businesses in general, especially software as a service companies, in the era of agents and agent builder, like you just showed?
Yeah, I think what I'm very excited about is, like, the big question is, how elastic is the software market? So, and what I mean is, given that it seems to be getting lower cost to create software, does that lead to the people who make software making less money, or does it lead to more software being created? And I think there's right now, people have backlogs that they can't ship because it's too expensive. And so there's definitely some elasticity, and so we're just going to make more software for a while. And then, so the only real question is not what's going to happen, it's just when will it actually be saturated. I'm very optimistic that there is a lot of software to write, and then a lot of software to maintain. I think it seems like LLMs should be good at software maintenance, but right now they're not. And people don't do that. And so, yeah, we'll have a lot more software, and we'll have to maintain it, and we have to deal with the consequences. And I think that there's substantial amount of lifetime employment for all of us in the future.
Yeah, my question was more like, are agents replacing software as a service companies, products of them? So I think, if you're a software as a service company, you probably have to ship agents and become an agent as a service company, or as we like to call AAS. That's a transformation, right? You have to go into that space. And I have not talked to a single SaaS company who doesn't have this on their roadmap, right? There's going to be a little bit of replacement. There's going to be a little bit of, software becoming cheaper. Does
I think is going to shift the make or buy decision often more towards the making than the buying. So there's going to be a bit of a change, but I think it's a navigatable. Like I certainly won't. I'm not calling the end of SaaS. I think it's overburdened because ultimately, while like there should be a lot of value in what you know about the business that you're supporting. In the sense, it's actually quite difficult to reproduce, even if making the software is like hypothetically even free. You still don't know what software to build.
Do you think this will lead to a bias? I mean, I think software engineers anyway have a bias towards building. Like, do you think people will get too lazy to actually become too lazy to Google or ChatGPT and instead rather build something which then takes them more time to actually maintain and really get to production?
Yes, the answer is yes, they will.
Yes, right, yeah.
Absolutely.
Hi. I'm curious to go slightly more into depth around certain example you gave. Not too much, of course, because we don't have so much time, but especially around the abuse report. I'm failing to understand where the agent brings a bit more value, because you mentioned that what you need is the context, some details about the customers or stuff like this. And this sounds like this that you could simply request or build query directly. It would be much more efficient and less expensive probably, because it's clear things that you need to ask to your database, for example. So probably it was very broad the way you presented it, and I would just like to understand where the agent in this case is really adding value. Because for the lead, I get it, but for the abuse, I'm not fully following.
Yeah, I think that it's, you know, the first thing I talk about is what's economically viable. Like I think abuse actually is a clear example for like there's a very large number of things that could be considered abusive. And the actual spectrum of what actually happens is actually quite large. And so while you might always, why wouldn't you just query how old this account is? Why wouldn't you query if they use a prepaid credit card or not, right? Like you can obviously like provide that as initial context and not bother letting the agent have a tool call run it, right? But like if because you're essentially operating against someone who's your adversary, right? Like so they're trying to not be detected, right? And so it might not be extremely trivial to find the indicators of phishing on a website. So there's like and so that's where like this like emergent behavior of the agent comes in, where you just give it tools and it can go figure things out on its own rather than being hard coded to do certain steps. But that, I'm 100% in agreement that it doesn't mean that you should not have the simple stuff in there as well, and do it in a deterministic way, because that's certainly going to improve the overall quality.
Thank you.
One more question there.
Thanks.
No.
So follow up on that one. So is that abuse agent then dynamically making decisions as to what to probe, what kind of traces to collect, and rather than, okay, I need to submit a report, so I need to collect blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, exactly, right? So the agent is giving an objective, and it's given a set of tools, and it's given essentially a description of what the tools can do, but then it can figure out how to use the tools themselves.
Can you elaborate as to how you are monitoring that one and the kind of tools it has access to?
Yeah, so it has access to tools like request, like make HTTP request against target host. It has tools to render web pages. It has tools to inspect files and run them against like abusive hashes and stuff like that. So it can choose what web pages to render, and it can choose which files to take a closer look at, and then it just goes on its own way in a very similar way to how coding agents work, right? Where they like it's actually worth exercise writing a coding agent. We also have a bunch open source. So if you take, let's say, Sonnet 4.5 and you give it a read file, a write file, a grep file tool, then you have like a essentially state-of-the-art coding agent. Like Claude Code, for example, does not have much more. There's a little bit of prompting, and you can literally also reverse engineers and find it out. But like it's very, very rudimentary. So the tools are not very specialized. They're very high level. Generally speaking, if you make the tools very specific, then you get more predictability but less emergent behavior, which means the thing is not as generic. If you give it something extremely generic, you can be delighted, and it might not work all the time, right? Like so there's a bit of a trade-off. But you have to let loose of this like determinism that we all have like trained into our head over decades, and just let the thing go run tools in loop. It's uncomfortable, but it not unfortunately, like it works. Like it does actually produce output.
Okay, one last question. Either there or there. Lena decides. Oh, there.
There's a bias to that row. It's kind of unfair. But next time, if you want to ask a question, you have to sit in row 3.
I'd like to hear your thoughts on the flip side of what you said, that agents are doing more and more at Vercel. What do you find are the humans doing more and more now that they have more time for less repetitive grunt work? And you mentioned I think it was the sales team, that it has more time to actually talk to customers. Do you have any other examples where work at Vercel changed for the humans?
Yeah, the sales folks can just do more active outreach, right? On the abuse team, we just couldn't hire people fast enough to actually staff that team so that they can breathe for the first time in a couple of years, it seems. So those are like kind of where like we replaced some repetitive work. I think I'm mostly engaged with the engineering team, and the role certainly changed, right? Like I think one of the surprising things is that the people who are most helped by AI on the engineering side are the most senior engineers, and the system engineers more than the web developers, again, which is kind of counterintuitive. But like if you have a lot of experience and if your role was already kind of very focused on code review, then those folks tend to now do extremely well because their job is now much more code review focused, just that the code comes from the AI and not necessarily other developers. So we see substantial improvement in productivity of our most senior engineers. And that's actually very material because like we have 200 engineers roughly, and but there is a distribution where like the top 10 are actually doing substantial percentage of overall impact, and if you can get 30% more out of them, that's absolutely incredible.
I have a follow-up here. You basically mentioned that like job or stuff gets done by senior people then more often. Like who will train? I mean, your example with the sales agent basically is perfect. Like in sales, this like top of funnel work was often given to junior people who then learned how to be like great salespeople. And I think there's an analogy to that happening in software engineering, where like juniors are sometimes like not or mentioned to be out, right? Like how do you see that in the future, and who will train the juniors to become seniors?
So I'm not worried about the juniors at all. In fact, we are incredibly impressed by the current kind of generation of interns that we have, because and that's not even going to get better because they are in a way AI native, right? Just like they're better at making TikTok videos than anyone here in the room, right? They're also better at AI-driven engineering. They grew up basically, and they grew up with being good at code review, etc. But because it's actually still relatively new, these are also people who actually didn't have AI-supported AI engineering when they started college 4 years ago, right? If they're in the senior year, so that we're going to see more of this being very native, right? So I'm actually, to be honest, I'm most worried like if you're like long enough in your career that you're very set in your ways, but you're actually not lowercase senior, rather than uppercase senior is the title, right? So like if you're not, you're maybe 4 years in and you're not a very flexible person, you really have a problem. But if you're 20 years in your job, you're fine. And if you just screw up, you're actually, I think, very empowered to kind of be the avant-garde of a new way to develop in a way that, I'm not worried. I'm not worried at all. Like it seems to be actually going the opposite way.
Cool. Thanks, Malte. So we actually filled up 1 hour, so there's no time for networking now. No time for drinks, no time for Bier nach 4. Just like a very quick product pitch, like because I'm curious, like your platform can then be used to deploy those agents that you've built with your open source toolkit, and I guess you provide like a lot of like debugging tooling, human in the loop, stuff like that, right?
Exactly, observability,
okay.
All that stuff, right?
Okay, then I did the pitch.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Malte.
People can find that on the website. I don't have to say it.
Okay, cool.
Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you, Malte.